Hi, and welcome to the Selected Tech podcast, brought to you by a group of 4 MVPs doing webinars, sessions, and interviews on all things SharePoint, Office 365, and the Microsoft AI ecosystem. Their motto is learn, share, reuse. And here they are, Albert Jan, Rick, Stefan, and Tommy.
Hi all, welcome at our 11th webinar that we're going to do. We did a European SharePoint conference last week, and during that conference we did a full workshop day where we talked about AI in Office 365. We talked on bots, on chatbots, and one of the final things that we show was the bot framework composer. So what we're going to do today is we're going to walk you through the bot framework composer. It's been announced at the Ignite, so it's pretty new, and well, we're excited to walk you through what you can actually achieve with it. So we have a quick demo on how to design your flows or your conversation flows and how to actually call an external API and actually work with that. Stefan, let's get started. Take over the screen and show us what you've got.
Sure. Now, to be honest, guys, I haven't seen this, so I especially didn't see this. So I heard about it, I read about it, I haven't seen it yet. So
you will like it.
Yeah. So if I say too much, whoa or wow or
how dare you can miss that.
We're going to show you some bad jokes, so that's always going to be fun.
Yeah. So first of all, the Composer is what they call integrated development environment for building bots without actually writing code. It's in preview currently. They announced the public preview at Ignite a couple of weeks back. You can get it from GitHub. We'll post the link everywhere. You'll see either the video or hear the recording of our webcast today. Mainly within the GitHub repo, there is a couple of things happening in here. You have docs in there, which actually describe on how to, first of all, install the Composer as a tool, and second of all, on how to use it. And as you can see down here, Rick, that's especially for you. It's a kind of, now it's called Power Automate-like, previously Flow-like interface for building actually your whole chatbot conversational design.
It's not a website I have to go to, right? It's something I install.
Yeah, it's basically a Node.js application running on your local host currently. So you have to clone the repo, do some Yarn install, Yarn build stuff with it. Then it spins up a local web server on your machine, and then you can use that application on your machine to first of all design the whole conversational mechanisms, and second of all you can have, or actually Composer offers you what they call a bot launcher, and with the bot launcher you can actually launch that bot on your local host as well. So what Composer actually does is it takes the whole dialogues you created within the UI and translates those dialogues into code. So in the end, you'll get a fully functional C# bot at the moment, which you can then launch right within Composer, and then you can basically test it and debug it with the bot framework emulator we're used to.
So it's actually like the Power Automate platform. It also writes code. You just don't see it. But
yeah,
it looks like the Power Automate.
The cool thing is with Composer, you actually can start your bot building phase with Composer, with the UI tool and that visual interface, and at some point in time you most probably will reach a point where you see, okay, I'm not going to finish the whole bot with Composer because it doesn't offer me everything I need, and as you have the fully functional bot already created via Composer, you can give that into the hands of your developers, and then let them enhance the whole business logic with code actually. And then basically switching back and forth between Composer and the development lifecycle. By I guess early next year, I hope at least that this tool, the Composer, will actually be available at some kind of deployable web application. So I'd prefer to host that as a Azure web app. for the sake of simplicity, so I don't need to run it on my local host, but run it as a web application right within Azure. You can already host it as a Docker container, but it has some dependencies on the local file system. So I've tried and I failed hosting it as a Docker image within my Azure environment. But maybe that will be possible too. So you basically can have that running somewhere in the cloud and just use it from there.
Yeah, for a team that would be easier if you all use the same
Yeah.
tool.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to install this for my non-developer people probably.
That's
but
right.
they probably want to start with it because it looks easy. So or it looks at least the screenshot looks easy.
Yeah. The cool thing about the whole tool is that it's quite extensible. So basically, what it offers you right now, there's no kind of role-based access control in there. So you can't have that role segregation. So one user might be some kind of developer or architect, and the other one might be some kind of business user. At the moment, you can't segregate the roles between those two role types within the Composer tool. But what you can do, of course, is to extend that to your needs. So you can basically revamp the whole tool and just use what they have built for you and build some stuff on top of that.
How big is the tool? Is it the big tool actually? Did you clone it already? How big is it?
Yeah, I've cloned it. Yeah, it's quite large, so there's quite some stuff happening in there. So you get basically two things. First of all, the Composer, which is the web application in there, which is quite complex, as you have a lot of packages for your client and for your server side stuff going on in there. And what you also get is where the magic happens is which is called bot project, but it's the bot launcher. So it basically is some kind of it's called OBI type loader. So you can basically load the whole bot at a runtime level from your Composer. So if you say, or there's the screenshot I have on the upper right side, there's the button restart bot or start bot. If you click that, the bot launcher will come into play, generate the whole code for you, then execute the code and run the code on your local host, and you have to do nothing within the CLI or wherever. That's quite cool.
Mm-hmm. And it runs on Windows and on other operating systems?
It runs basically everywhere because it's just Node.js.
Oh, cool. And then the Node.js probably generates C#, .NET Core stuff, and that also runs everywhere. So, oh, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Currently, if I'm gonna switch back to my VS Code, what you see in there for the bot project is a C# folder, and they also have added a Node folder, which is empty right now. But what they're thinking about is that you can basically choose which type of or which language you wanna have your code generated in. If you click start the bot, so then you can have either C# bots generated or Node.js bots generated from Composer, and in the future maybe even Python and Java. Good.
Let's have a look.
Sorry?
Let's have a look.
Yeah. So I'm gonna just quickly start my Composer. So it's basically just one comment, yarn start all, which will start both the Composer and the bot launcher. And if I switch back to my Edge and I just refresh the page, what you see in there is the landing page of the Composer with your recent bots you've created. You have some examples in there, so they're the common examples: EchoBot, EmptyBot, but you also get simple to do with Lewis. What you also get is Q&A Maker and Lewis, which I use quite often, because if you generate that kind of bot, and we'll do that right now, is that you also have the possibility or basically the whole dialog tree already generated for you with Lewis and Q&A Maker. So I'm gonna create my new bot, give it a name, and you'll see it will basically be created within your Composer repo or within your Composer folder under My Bots. So if I create that, what we get in there is a new dialog called main. Within that dialog, on the left-hand side, we have various triggers. So we have a trigger for welcoming the user, which is apparently conversation update. We have a trigger for help, for unrecognized intent, and for by surface. So if I select one trigger, I immediately get to the display of what this trigger and this part of the conversation does. So within the trigger, it says there's a condition, and that's quite similar to Flow actually working with the conditions. If a new member is added to the conversation and the member is not a bot, it will be triggered, and there will be a response sent to the user. And what you see in here is already some new features called language generation, which is also still in preview. But what you can do right now is to define multiple, for example, answers. And what the bot actually does is it randomly picks one of those answers generated or defined within your language generation file and sends it to the user. So you have a more natural
random,
way,
yeah.
more natural way of interacting with your users.
More human-like conversation, yeah.
Yeah. If I switch back to the main dialog, what you also see from the right-hand side is you can define your language understanding model right within Composer with that LU markup language. So you define basically all of your bot-related stuff in Composer as well. So you don't have to go to Lewis to actually define the language generation model. You do that within Composer. So you have like hashtag and then the name is the intent, followed by the sample utterances. And what you also can do is to define the entities within your intents as well, like a product type. That's quite time saving because then you don't have to switch back and forth between the whole tool stack. You do just all of the basic stuff within Composer.
Yeah, otherwise you'll be switching between Lewis.
Yeah. And that's also a great thing to have, because with that kind of template I selected, a Lewis and Q&A maker, you get that already pre-populated. You just need to modify it to fit your needs, basically. So if I would say I need a new intent called tell joke, for example, and I say can you please tell me a joke? I want to laugh. Are you funny?
Say something funny.
There a joke you want to tell me? Say something funny. This is basically how you define the whole language understanding model. Right within there. And what you now get is, as we defined the intent in the markdown file here, if I click on new trigger from the left-hand side and I select the trigger type is an intent, I immediately have tell joke as a trigger within there.
Smart enough to auto-save that, because it did it posted to Lewis already? No, it's kind of a fake Lewis in the back.
It's not yet posted to Lewis. It will be posted, or it will be actually the whole language understanding model will be generated the first time I click start bot from the upper right side. So if I click start bot, it will ask me, we'll see that later on from my Lewis key. I need to provide that the orphan key, and then it will actually generate the whole Lewis model for me. So if I now say within my tell joke trigger or part of the conversation, what I want to do actually is, for example, call or send a response first of all. So I could say send a response, and here is a joke for you, or look at that joke. But what I want to do right now, I don't want to have the jokes hard coded in there. I want to reach out to a public API, and that's quite easy to do because you can access external resources and integrate them within your bot, and there you have the option to send an HTTP request. So I click that. I immediately can select which type of HTTP method I want to use. What is the URL? So I'm going for a Chuck Norris joke API. And I then can say I want to save the response of that HTTP request in a new initialized property. So the result property is actually the property which will be initialized if the HTTP request will be generated, and the response of that HTTP request will then be stored within that variable, within that property, which I can then use the whole conversation on.
Can you do that outside of this? So if you now go to, I don't know, welcome message, can you use this one as well? No.
Yeah.
Within this screen or outside of it?
I can use it within the whole dialog.
Oh, cool.
So I have that HTTP request created. Now I need to actually send the response, and that's also quite easy because what I can do right now is here you go, and then I have this notation of accessing variables right within the language generation. So it's curly brackets and then variable name. And this will make sure that I use the variable value right within my response. So if I now say an start bot.
And we tried that before. That's why content value is the correct variable name, because you basically parse the JSON response with those variable names.
Yeah, this is the content of the JSON and then the property value. Yeah.
Depending on the JSON payload, you need to do different variables here, but we tried that before. That's why Stefan knows it already.
Yeah, but you have to, if you're testing the API or it's your own API, then you know what you give back.
You need to play a little bit with it,
And it would be super easy as well to just, I don't know, call Azure function or something,
for example, So I clicked start bot, and immediately I get the pop-up that it wants to publish my Lewis model. So what it needs to do that is the Lewis primary key. And I can get my primary key if I go to lewis.ai, sign into the Lewis application. And then what I need to do is to grab the right key, because in Composer it says Lewis primary key. What it actually needs is the Lewis authoring key. So you go to your settings page of your profile, scroll down, and there you have the primary key, which apparently is here primary key. In the new Lewis portal in the preview, it says authoring key. So it's quite confusing which key to use. And there's another interesting fact. It's only available right now with the West US type of Lewis. So if you're going for eu.lewis.ai and grab your key from there, it won't work. Same is true for the language. It's only available in EN US right now, so you can't do a Dutch bot or German bot right now, right within Composer. You gotta go with English for the moment.
But you have the code, so you could possibly change it.
Of course. But only with the Composer tool as it is, you can't basically do anything else than English.
Yeah.
Which is okay because it's still preview, not released yet.
So by clicking OK, on the top right side, we see it's now publishing. So it will actually now reach out to my Lewis account, create the selected tag Lewis app. In the selected tag Lewis app, it creates the help, pie surface, and joke intents, and assigns the uterances into my intents. and then it will basically also save and train the model, and it will be publishing the model. And if it's published, we can basically test our bot right within or right from Composer.
And they're probably using the same APIs that we did a few webinars ago.
Yeah, exactly the same. So if it's done, we'll see another button coming up, which is called Test in Emulator. So if I click that, we'll say, okay, localhost wants to open this application bot framework emulator. So we're going to open that. And it connects to my localhost again, localhost some port /API/messages. It also greets me with the welcome message. So if I restart the conversation a couple of times, it will say hi, or at some point it will say hey, then it will say welcome again. So there's this language generation part within there. If I now say something funny, look at that joke is the first response we sent, and then we have the second response. Here you go, and this is basically what we got back from the API request. So we see that in here as well within the debug trace. It reaches out to the Chuck Norris API, and it gets back a value with a response. Response has a content, and the content has a value again, which is exactly our joke. We
There's
get
a
back.
content and a value. Okay.
Yeah.
And so the bot is local now, and the Lewis is online. Yeah, in the cloud, and then the API is also online.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we see the Lewis trace within there. The text was say something, and the internet detected was tell joke. So if I would now say as well, how can I buy a Surface Pro? We see that we get back from Lewis the intent by Surface, and we get the score back and everything else. So basically, we didn't do anything except from defining the intents within the Markdown language, and that's basically it to wrap up the whole language understanding model.
Cool. It's super fast. You already have a working bot within like 10 minutes or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And unless you change something in Lewis, I think, Stefan, when you go back and just change a little bit the response, just to show Rick how fast you can do something. Because when you just change, let's say in the joke dialog, before you send the response, like, here you go, let's change the greeting before, not one down.
One down?
Yep. Just instead of here you go, here you are, or something like that. And then restart the bot.
Just restart.
Yeah.
Go back to the emulator.
Restart conversation, and you're done.
Yeah, super fast.
And that's super fast. Unless you change, if you change, I think, the Lewis model, then it needs to republish it.
Yeah.
But just the language generation is super fast. So when we played with it in parsing the JSON, this was like click, 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 and just restart.
And
super fast, yeah.
And in the backend, actually, you can watch the code in real time. So what it actually does is you get for each bot a folder, and within that you get Composer dialogs as a subfolder, where you basically have your whole dialogs created as what they call .dialog files. This is basically what it generates.
Code. Okay, so they're not. I thought they were really creating code, but
yeah, they do, but they translate the JSON with a new feature called adaptive dialogues into code then, or basically the whole code which is generated here interprets that JSON and then creates the logic from it.
Yeah, the smart move. Instead of creating every bot different code, they just have the same code base.
They have a template and they interpret the JSON.
Oh yeah, smart move.
And to show you how easy it is to basically chain more than one API together is that we could, for example, for actually sending out the response, call another API to analyze the text. So what we want to do is we want to reach out to our text analytics API, which we've created earlier, which runs in Azure as well. We do the same thing, HTTP request. Instead of get, we say post. The body will include our dialog choke response content.value, which is actually the choke then. What we need then is a subscription key for allowing us to call the API.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you created that first in Azure.
Yeah.
So we're calling a secured API now, just adding the header, making sure that the key is there. And so you can also create or call your own APIs in Azure.
Yeah. So we store, again, the result we get back from this HTTP call into a property called dialog.textAnalytics. So if we have called that, we can actually send back the sentiment score of that choke immediately. And what we can do then is to create a condition saying if the dialog score is above 0.5, we're good. If not, drop it. So in order to do that, we basically initialize a new property called dialog score. It's of type object. Then we assign that property to whatever we have in there, which is apparently that thing here. So it's the score we got back. Now we can use dialog.score the whole in the whole dialog. And if that evaluates to true, we again say, or we actually respond with the choke. We can do that in various types of responses. If the choke is inappropriate, so if the condition evaluates to false, we just inform the user saying, okay, there's the choke is inappropriate because the sentiment score was too low.
Yeah, I was just before you delete. I was just gonna ask, can you
No.
drag and drop them? No.
Not yet.
Not yet, no.
That would be nice, but
That would be
Yeah.
nice, yeah. So if I
Or
restart
copy
it
and
now
paste and store and all those things.
yeah.
and say something funny, it will basically immediately give me back the sentiment score, but there's still a bug in there because the sentiment score is below 0.5 and I have set above 0.5.
No, you tell it's smaller than 5.
Smaller than 5, yeah.
So the responses should be, this one should be bigger, like that.
Yeah.
But well, we get the gist. Makes sense.
Yeah, but this wouldn't be nice work.
This is It's exactly 0.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite interesting because there are a lot of chokes which are 0.5. I don't know why exactly, but there are a lot of chokes which apparently are inappropriate.
This is looking good.
Oh, yeah,
No, that's true, yeah. That's okay.
totally
Yeah.
not there.
But didn't you in our last demo, didn't you need to change something with the variables to move to integer? Did you change that now?
Yeah, what I did change is I changed my regional settings on Windows because last week, right before the session, I had the problem of doing that condition stuff, and I did it with conditioning the score I get back from Louis. So if the score of that intent is above a certain value, it should actually trigger. And if it's below, it shouldn't trigger and should immediately go to the unrecognized intent, which then apparently would connect to Q&A Maker. And I thought I just created a sample and didn't change anything, just ran the bot. and it immediately called Q&A maker all the time. Even if I say help or I need help, which should evaluate to the help intent. And then I thought that's kind of strange.
And the exact same thing worked on my machine. That's the next strange thing.
Yeah, and on his machine it worked. And then we figured out I had German regional settings and Tommy had English regional settings. So my operating system didn't do a 0.5, it did 0.5.
Yeah.
And Tommy's obviously didn't, because it used the English settings. So I switched it to English regional settings, and now it's working, apparently.
So there's only one locale, and that's English, period.
Yeah.
Yep.
I created a GitHub issue a couple of days ago, and they weren't aware of that, of course, because they just use English. But they told me that they'll investigate on this because it's not exact, or basically it's not a composer issue, it's a operating system issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think you
like-
got around before the session because you converted the string to an integer and then it worked again. Yeah.
What I did, I can basically show what I did. I hope I have it somewhere. What I did is I
love
set
the joke that you had on the other
probability,
ones.
and I just casted my text analytics core as an int, because I can do that. I have various mapping and converting operations available in there.
Yeah, it looks a little bit like C#, but it isn't, or I don't know. It looks familiar, but it isn't probably. So
yeah, they
At
have
least
some,
it's readable, so you can understand it
it's
easily.
readable, yeah. If you're interested, there, I guess they have a
it should be
docs
documented somewhere.
section in there somewhere. Where is it? How to use validation? Is it that? No. Should be somewhere in there. Line triggers. It's somewhere in there in the GitHub repo.
Okay.
And there are
Yeah,
a lot of
you'll figure it out,
there are a lot of operations you can use to actually make that happen.
And I think the Ignite demo they did, they called the weather API or to get back the weather of a certain zip code.
Yeah. So
That's
what they
also in
did
there.
actually, they didn't, or they had a dialog which sent a response, let's check the weather, and then the bot actually prompted the user for the zip code, because you can do that. You can't only send responses, you can even ask questions.
Yeah.
And
OAuth login, oh cool.
you have the default bot framework prompts in there, text, number, confirmation, so on and so forth. And this will be validated automatically. And then you can use that input and feed, for example, a API again. So they have done a HTTP request to an Azure function, and they just pass user.zipcode, which is apparently the variable they got from the prompt, into the URL as a URL parameter. That's quite easy.
Mm-hmm. Now, if I was okay, so now let's say you're done, but you want something to give. What do you give to the developer now? The entire solution, probably, yeah, or the entire, yeah.
So there are two options. You can basically give the developer the whole solution.
Yeah.
What they are working on right now is that right within Composer, you should soon be able to have another option in there saying connect to bot framework skill.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So basically your developer can develop the bot framework skill, which is apparently just a bot. And you, from the composer, from the business side, just say, okay, at this point, I want to connect to that skill, hand over the whole conversation to that skill, and integrate this skill into my bot.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like Alexa. Okay.
Yeah.
You add a skill, then you're in that skill. It does what it has to do, and then it returns it again.
Then it runs. Yeah, correct.
Because with this, the business stays in in charge of the bot, because they can change the dialogues very easily. Because when you derail it and then go with code, it's again just a developer task. But if you just make a module, make the skill, your business can still change the Lewis model, can change the language, dialogues, whatsoever, and just pick and choose the different components.
Yeah, you can build building blocks instead of entire.
Yep.
Yeah, and that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Of course, because the dialogue management is with that opportunity is really super fast and very, very easy.
Yeah.
And then is there something with logging or something? Let's say, for instance, I want this bot is done. I deploy it to Azure, and then there you have an emitted trace event and stuff like. Okay, so that the business can see what's going on, who did what.
Yeah. And in terms of deployment, that's also quite easy, because on the settings page you have a publish section in there. We basically have two tasks. First of all, create the whole Azure environment. So what you need in there is a environment name and a app secret, which you can basically choose on your own. Then you think you can choose the Azure region, but it only states West US.
Still West US.
And what it gives you is a PowerShell script for creating the Azure resources. So it will basically create Azure App Service plans, Azure App Services, or one Azure App Service plan, one Azure App Service, the bot frame or Azure Bot Channel Registration Service, a Cosmos DB, whatsoever. So you basically run that script, runs 5 to 10 minutes, will create the Azure resources, and then you say deploy bot. Again, give the same name in there for the environment. You get a second PowerShell script, which will then deploy your code onto the app service.
Yeah.
When you're done.
The black screen thingy, it's a GIF, right? It's a video or something.
It's
an image. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking, well, what are you doing? It's going so fast, but okay.
It's a nice GIF with a with a skull, or is this? Interesting.
Yeah, that's coming from Ben Brown, who is one of the fathers of Composer. He has done the BotKit AI stuff. So this was basically something similar. It was also some kind of he called it CMS for bots.
Yeah.
So you had that visual interface. Where is it? To have some kind of things. It was quite similar. It was quite similar to the Composer. So he founded that, and then he joined Microsoft to work on the Composer, along with a couple of other folks. And this was basically some kind of starting thing, and I guess they took that onto the Microsoft level and made Composer out of it.
Cool.
Very cool stuff.
Yeah.
So do you like this?
Yeah, super easy. Yeah, well, you don't have to. Yeah, you still have to develop probably a little bit, but yeah, just walking into a customer's office, showing him this within 10 minutes. Here you go, proof of concept, just to get started as well.
Yeah. That's the cool thing. So especially for workshops or whatever, you just have that one tool, talk an hour about bots, and then say, okay, now let's build one.
Yeah.
Spend 10 minutes.
Inspire a business what they can actually achieve with it.
Yeah.
Yep.
But you still need a developer because it still looks a little bit developer-y. So non-developers will get a little bit scared of the look and feel, but it's okay to preview it. Probably when after Microsoft Marketing gets a hand of it, then it will look totally different.
One of course needs to understand the basics of development. So what are conditions? As you see here, double equal signs. You need to know that.
Yeah, okay, but
Do HTTP requests, you need to know what the headers are, what the result would look like. These are
nowadays for flow, you also need to know that stuff. So
sure.
Yeah.
But you need to have some kind of development, high level understanding at least.
That's what they call citizen developer or
yeah,
whatever that is.
yeah, it looks cool. Yeah, added value.
Yeah.
And then especially the deployment as well. I like that one. Getting the ARM template and yeah.
That's quite cool. Takes about 10 to 15 minutes. You're good to go.
In your own environment, of course. In an enterprise environment, setting this up behind several proxy and firewall.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, of course.
That's always the case.
Different story.
Yeah. I like
So,
I
cool
like the black band on the top. It looks like a weird version of Office 365.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess
No,
that's on
cool.
purpose.
Okay, Stefan, thank you for showing me this.
Welcome.
With that, I think we're done for today.
Yeah.
Oh?
That's it for tonight, right? No more
So-
demos so far.
They'll probably put the link in the show notes, and then
Sure.
Yeah.
see you guys next time.
See ya.
Yeah.
See you all.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to check out the show notes at selectedtech.show to get all the mentioned references. And one more thing, please tweet about the podcast and give them a 5-star review. This really helps the guys a lot. Thank you and see you next time. Bye.